As we begin this story together, I feel it's only fair to offer a gentle warning. What follows is a deeply personal and emotionally layered journey, one that bravely explores the tender chaos of new motherhood, the fragile and often fraught dynamics of family, and the raw, unsettling complexities of infidelity. If any of these themes strike too close to home, or if they evoke more discomfort than you're ready to sit with, you might choose to pause here. This tale doesn't rush it. Lingers, like the truths we avoid and the silences we live beside. That particular morning was cloaked in a hush that felt almost unnatural. The kind of stillness that doesn't just fill a space, it breathes. I stood in the kitchen, fingertips tracing the cold, polished granite of the counter, grounding myself in the texture of the present moment. The soft hum of the refrigerator buzzed louder than it had any right to. Maybe it was the silence making everything else seem louder. Or maybe it was the echo of all the days, choices, and sacrifices that had brought me to this house, to this chapter. A chapter where, for the first time in a long time, things felt almost balanced. But balance was hard won. Stability had never come easily. There was a time not so long ago when my world consisted of little more than a shoebox apartment, faded curtains and the creaking sound of too many dreams trying to fit into too small a space. It was Noah and me, always just us, patching holes in ceilings and in our hearts. Nights were often spent curled on a threadbare couch, him beside me with eyes fixed on overdue bills, his small face carrying more worry than a child should know. I did everything to hide my fear, but he always saw Noah was sharp like that, perceptive beyond his years. He'd quietly climb into my lap, wrap his arms around me, and whisper promises that everything would be all right. Somehow in his presence, it always felt like it might be. His father, an old friend turned temporary partner, had left this world as silently as he had entered our lives. No drama, no declarations, just a quiet fading. And in the aftermath, Noah came to stay. There were no battles, no paperwork wars. Just a boy and a woman finding their way through the wreckage. I used to wonder if pieces of his father would bloom in Noah as he grew older. But they didn't. Noah carried none of his coldness, none of his urge to vanish. He was rooted, steady. We became two people sharing space, secrets, and stories. There was no use hiding anything in a place where the walls were so thin you could hear someone dreaming. So we talked openly, often, about everything and nothing. His questions were bold, sometimes uncomfortable, and I answered them all. In return, he trusted me with thoughts I knew most kids would hide. That trust built something sacred. A quiet interdependence. Even as he got older, more independent, more curious about the world, Noah never strayed far. While his peers explored rebellion, he lingered at home, with me, laughing at corny jokes, debating movie endings, and resting his head on the same couch where he once napped as a boy. I never felt I was losing him, and that mattered more than I knew. Still, there were days when the closeness felt like a weight, a warmth that threatened to burn if I didn't find space to breathe. That's when I turned inward, into fitness. At first it was an escape, a routine, and it grew into a ritual of reclamation. It wasn't just about appearance. It was about strength, resilience, rebuilding. Each morning jog became a declaration. Each weight I lifted, a reminder that I was still here, still capable, still growing. And people noticed. More importantly, I noticed. That spark, once dulled by struggle, began to flicker again. I stood taller, spoke with conviction. I started craving more than survival. And that's when I bought this house. With its wide windows, sunlight-drenched rooms, and a silence that comforted rather than haunted. I made a promise to myself to feel no shame about this space. I earned it. We earned it. The hot tub came later. It felt frivolous at first. Luxurious. In a way that almost embarrassed me. But after everything I'd endured, indulgence didn't feel sinful, it felt like healing. I told Noah before I ordered it. He smiled, supportive but unmoved. He told me I deserved it, and to enjoy it. His indifference surprised me. My excitement, however, ran deep. That first night in the water felt like a milestone. I stayed until the tips of my fingers pruned, watching the steam curl upward like a whispered affirmation. It was real. This life. This stillness. And as the weekend approached, I became eager to share it with Noah. Not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. I hinted at how soothing it was, how it could help his muscles after a workout. He resisted, of course. Said it wasn't really his thing. But that night, after dinner, I asked again. And this time, he said yes. It should have been simple. Just a shared soak. Just water and words. Yet, as I reached for my swimsuit, I hesitated. Not out of shame or doubt, but from the sudden awareness of how long it had been since I looked at myself and liked what I saw. I adjusted the straps. Smoothed my hair. Told myself it was about the tub, not the way my stomach fluttered. Outside, the air was unusually warm. The wind soft, the night quiet. I carried 2 drinks with trembling fingers and placed them on the tub's edge. Noah was already there, half submerged, reclining like he belonged there. Relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. I told you it'd be worth it, I said, stepping in slowly, letting the heat wrap around me. He gave a slight smile. Okay, you were right. I'll admit it. This ... isn't bad. But I'm keeping this spot. The jets are magic. I laughed. You know that's my spot. I'll have to fight you for it. You snooze, you lose. We bantered. Light. Familiar. Yet beneath it, something hummed. Something wordless. Eventually I slid closer, switching spots. And the moment I sat down, I understood. The jets were perfectly aligned, hitting every ache. A sigh escaped before I could stop it. Told you, he said, grinning. I leaned in playfully, reaching for his arm. Then you won't mind if I take it back? He laughed, dodging. Water splashed as we wrestled, playful and clumsy, until he surrendered. Fine, fine, you win. Just don't spill my drink. I settled beside him, closer than usual, too close, but neither of us moved. He looked away. Sorry, he whispered. For what? I asked, too quickly. I didn't mean to ... I don't know. It wasn't it jets, I interrupted, smiling. Relax. But he wasn't relaxed. His cheeks flushed, his eyes averted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel at all. Seen, alive, unsettled. And as he slipped out of the water moments later, mumbling something about needing another drink, I watched him go. My gaze lingered, my breath caught. What was that? That question would echo in my mind well into the night. And again, in the morning. Because something had shifted, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't unfeel it. What transpired during our last encounter? I leaned in, tilting my head, mentioned that his face was turning red. A miniature version of myself has chosen to partake in the festivities. I found myself laughing, perhaps a touch excessively, I appreciate. The compliment this face flushed an even deeper shade of crimson, and I chose to let the matter rest yet as he emerged. And I caught sight of him through his damp shorts. That familiar thrill surged within me, once more following Christmas, I discovered. Yet another reason to delay matters. A sauna I had chosen as a present for my own enjoyment. Noah volunteered to handle the setup, and I ensured I remained nearby as he went about his task. I leaned against the doorway clad in a crop top and shorts observing him as he meticulously tightened the screws. "Oh, Mr. Handyman," I murmured, trailing my fingers down his arm dismissively. "Ye thou shall I ever repay you," he chuckled dismissively. Yet I caught the fleeting glance of his eyes trailing down to my legs before he redirected his attention to the instructions. I allowed it to linger in the air for a moment, before retreating up and completing the construction the following day. I inquired if he wished to test it out alongside me. He paused for a moment, but then I urged him, "Come on, you created this, you should at least take pleasure in it." That did the job. I donned a pair of shorts and a tank top, embracing the freedom of going braless, merely sufficient to sustain the momentum of the game. He arrived in gyms, shorts shirtless, embodying a man rather than the boy I once raced. We nestled into the sauna, our legs grazing against each other, and I could feel my heart quicken. I leaned back and remarked, "You've done such an excellent job in here, are you certain?" "There's nothing further I can offer," remarked with a grin. He remarked, "I do have a significant problem that you could help me with." I blinked, momentarily taken aback, but before I could utter a word he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. He was just joking, of course. I assumed our guest had returned," I playfully remarked, casting a glance at his shorts. His gaze darted to my chest for just a fleeting moment. Yet it was enough to send a shiver across my skin. "It seems you're not alone in hosting guests," he retorted, his gaze lingering on the outline of my nipples against the delicate material. I stood tall, trying to mask the flutter of nerves with a casual smile. I wasn't sure who I was performing for, him or myself. "It's a common occurrence." Following a workout timer chattering the stillness of the moment. He rose first, and I trailed behind, our bodies brushing together as we exited. He remained in place. "Perhaps I'll join you for a workout next time I lay in bed," said a grin spreading across his face. I would cherish that. I responded it. The words seemed to carry a weight far beyond their intent that night. I lay in bed, a sense of restlessness enveloping me. A part of me yearned to halt, to draw a line, and retreat to the familiar. Another part craved the thrill of pushing boundaries, eager to discover just how far I could go before something inevitably broke. I never intended to mention it, certainly not in the manner it unfolded after all that had transpired. The playful jabs, the sound, a moment's lingering glances, I found it impossible to overlook. And he felt the same way. Commenced in the heart of the home as I rinsed the dishes. I remained clad in my tank top and shorts, remnants of my morning workout. Still clinging to me, Noah stepped behind me to reach a glass, and for a moment our arms brushed. Noah stepped behind me. It was nothing, but it lingered. Somehow just the right amount of pressure to reveal that it was no mere accident. I paused for a fleeting moment, warmth flooding my cheeks, yet I remained where I was. "You're making quite the statement today," he said with an awkward grin. I laughed it off, but inside I was already on edge. "You observed, did you?" I retorted, striving to maintain a calm tone. It's somewhat challenging to avoid that it was at that moment that everything changed. He paused as if searching for the perfect words, then inquired casually, though it was clear he was unsure of the boundaries of what he could express, what aspects were acceptable and which ones fell short. The atmosphere seemed to drain away, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. He sought permission, probing the depths, and I could no longer feign that this was merely a figment of my imagination. In the end declared he sought permission. Words hold no significance. Feel free to express anything that comes to mind. Hold anything overstep its bounds, will simply label it a poor attempt at humor, and carry one appeared to be a mix of relief and anxiety. I sensed the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind, so I decided to press a bit further. "What is the significance of touch?" I inquired. "What is acceptable in that regard?" He hesitated, his throat constricting as he swallowed. "I'm uncertain. Let's be honest. If anything ever feels uncomfortable, we say so. No jokes, no pretending. That's our relief. Something starts to feel wrong, we stop. No jokes, no pretending." He let out a quick, nervous laugh. Yet he nodded in agreement. Agreed. I reassured myself that it was Merely innocent, merely a whimsical pact forged between two individuals who had always shared a deep bond. He nodded in agreement, yet the moment carried a weight far greater than that my stomach churned as I faced the dishes, feigning ignorance to the weight of his gaze lingering on me. It was not long before we put it to the test as the night deepened. I found myself loading the dishwasher when suddenly I felt his hand graze my hip. Swift, yet intentional, I jolted upright, colliding directly with him. He stood his ground. Instead, he didn't step away immediately, and the air between us turned still like a moment stretched too far. And I gazed up at him with wide eyes. "Someone's feeling bold," I remarked, my voice dropping lower than I intended. He retorted that it was fine, yet his flushed face told a different story. I cast a sly glance over my shoulder before turning away, yet the warmth lingered on it even after he departed to join his friends that evening. I rummaged through my closet. He smiled, yet extracting skirts, dresses, and tops that had languished unworn for years. I longed for his attention. I felt an urge to continue striving. With the dawn of a new day, I set about doing precisely that. I walked downstairs in a fitted blouse and skirt I hadn't worn in years. I told myself it was just for me, a small rebellion against feeling invisibly just the right number of buttons left undone to spark the imagination. He stood in the kitchen, barely dressed, looking half asleep. I joked about my outfit being a fashion statement. He laughed, but we both knew there was tension in the air. Kind, best left untouched. He smiled, yet I caught the subtle change in his gaze. He had ceased to jest. His hand grazed my lower back as he strolled by, and I leaned into the touch just enough to convey my approval. The following days unfolded with a familiar rhythm of subtle gesture, glances and remarks that flirted tantalizingly close to the boundaries we both understood were best left untested. He grew bolder, and I followed suit. "You're going to get me in trouble," he remarked one evening. I leaned down to retrieve an item from the floor. Perhaps I wished to, I returned, straightening my posture and turning to confront him. "You look nice," he said awkwardly. I laughed it off, though the compliment lingered longer than it should as the week drew to a close. It had evolved beyond mere comments or unintentional brushes of skin. It was embraces that lingered too longer. Gentle collision in the corridors where ample room existed. His hands brushed against my hips as he reached around me to retrieve something, and each time it occurred, I experienced that familiar thriller rush of heat and curiosity that ignited my desire for more. Yet we consistently retreated. We'd chuckle, share a jest, and act as if nothing had transpired. We consistently retreated. It seemed we were both apprehensive about the implications of what lay ahead if we chose not to intervene. Yet neither of us wished to bring it to an end. "Not at this moment. I don't know what's happening," he admitted one night as we lounged on the couch, feigning interest in the television flickering before. "You see," echoed the sentiment. "Me neither, yet it brings a sense of pleasure indeed," remarked, his gaze fixed on the screen. Yet his mind seemed to drift elsewhere. "Indeed it does." We departed with an understanding of no commitments and no conclusions, an unvoiced pact, a silent understanding to persist, to continue the playful banterol in the pursuit of discovering the destination it might unveil. Despite my resolve to maintain a light-hearted spirit, I found myself pondering the duration of our restraint. It caught me off guard that even it unfolded unexpectedly, yet perhaps that was the very reason it became so irresistible. It unfolded unexpectedly, yet halt in the cozy embrace of the living room. It was just the two of us, enveloped in a shared silence. Television flickered with images, yet neither of us truly engaged. With its gloomy legs lay extended, draped over his lap, while he absent-mindedly traced gentle circles around my ankle. It wasn't our inaugural moment in such a setting. An unmistakable shift lingered in the air. This time he was entirely serious, without a hint of jest or mockery. I wasn't either. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a weight that hung between us yet neither of us dared to break. The silence, it was only when Noah finally exhaled that the silence was shattered, spoke softly, his confusion evident. I don't understand. What is it that you seek? I inquired, despite already possessing the knowledge. I find myself utterly bewildered by the unfolding events. I inquired. And it's causing me considerable distress. I drew my legs and sitting upright to meet his gaze. Gaze was elsewhere, not directed at me. His gaze was anchored to the ground. His hands clutched his knees as if he were seeking balance. I wasn't the only one. I confess. Tummy voice seemed to echo, overwhelming in its softness, despite being little more than a whisper. I have been endeavoring to unravel it as well. He finally turned his gaze toward me, and in that moment I saw something unrefined and intense in his eyes, a sensation that coiled tightly within my gut. Am I alone in this, or do others feel the same? I inquired. I assure you this is not a figment of my imagination. No, I said, you are not. We found ourselves enveloped in silence once more. Yet this time it felt even more oppressive. It felt perilous, as if a single misplaced word could unravel it all. I ought to have concluded it at that point. He brushed it aside, shifted the conversation. Yet I found myself unable to do so. I had no desire to. I feel as though I'm losing my mind, he said, running a hand through his hair. I find myself thinking too much about us, about this strange space we've wandered into. I don't know what it means, and that frightens me. My breath hitched, rendering me momentarily speechless. Yet when I finally found my voice, the words tumbled out before I could rein them. Eni reiterated, you're not the only one. My experience has mirrored that sentiment. His eyes grew wide as if the words had caught him completely off guard. To my surprise, I found myself uttering the words aloud, and once they escaped my lips there was no way to retract them. I don't know what to do with it, he said. His voice had grown softer. No, it's playing tricks on my mind half the time. I find myself yearning to escape the confines of this room. His voice faded, yet desperate to silence the thoughts of you, and in the other half, I am ensnared by your memory. His voice faded, yet I understood his meaning perfectly. My skin felt aflame, and my heart raced with such intensity that I was convinced he could hear its frantic rhythm. I ought to have said something to put an end to it, acknowledge that we couldn't continue down this path yet. I remained silent. It frightens me as well, I replied. Yet it also fear gripped me as I hesitated, reluctant to complete the thought. Yet I knew I couldn't deceive him or myself. I confess that it makes me feel truly alive. Silence enveloped us, and for a fleeting moment, neither of us uttered a sound. Noah reclined, allowing his head to rest against the couch. Mother of divine grace, he ran his hands down his face. Silence enveloped Uston turned his gaze back to me. What on earth are we doing? I'm not quite sure, I admitted truthfully. I have no desire to halt. He gazed at me, as if he were on a quest for something, permission or a hint of reassurance that he wasn't losing his mind, but all I could offer him was the unvarnished truth. We can't pretend to dance around this forever. If something ever feels too close to the edge, we'll stop and say so. No grimace, no confusion. He nodded, yet the turmoil in his eyes was unmistakable, and if I were to be truthful, I felt it as well. Uncertainty loomed over how much longer we could maintain the facade of mere teasing. Yet for the moment this was what I craved. I craved the way his gaze met mine, way he stirred emotions within me. I should go to bed, he said, suddenly standing up and running a hand through his hair. Indeed, I spoke, yet neither of us made a move. He hesitated for a fleeting moment. He hesitated for a fleeting moment as if anticipating my intervention. Yet I remained silent. When he finally turned and walked away, I was left in solitude, grappling with my thoughts, questioning whether what we had was already beyond repair. Night passed in restless wakefulness. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversation repeatedly until its edges began to blur into a haze of uncertainty. A sense of relief washed over me as if a great weight had been lifted now that all was laid bare. Yet another part of me felt burdened more than ever before. I had traversed a boundary, albeit one constructed solely in my mind, and I found myself at a loss for how to return to the other side. The following morning I discovered Noah in the kitchen. He stood at the counter, already dressed, cradling a cup of coffee in his hand. glanced up as I entered, and for a fleeting moment silence enveloped us, yet there was an absence of tension. Silence enveloped us, a stark contrast to the night prior silence prevails. Morning, he said, his voice softer than usual. Good morning. I reached for a mug, carefully filling it while striving to maintain a steady hand. I sensed his gaze upon me, causing my heart to race, yet this time I maintained my composure. This time it shall not be so, began to speak about last night. But I interrupted him. It is essential that we have a conversation. I turned to face him, setting my cup down. Yet we must also embrace honesty with ourselves. Nodded. There was a flicker of anxiety in his expression, as if he were uncertain about what words might escape my lips. To be honest, I found myself uncertain as well, yet deep down I understood that we could no longer maintain the facade, that nothing was unfolding. It was evident beyond doubt. I cannot bear the thought of losing you, I declared, regardless of the circumstances. Stepping closer, you won't, he said quickly, stepping closer. I truly swear, yet we cannot continue down this path, whatever it may be. My voice trembled, yet I persevered. It's affecting us both, and I refuse to allow it to reach a stage from which we cannot return. What shall we do next? He inquired, his voice trembling, slightly stirring a pang of sorrow within me. We established limits, genuine ones without a doubt. I swallowed hard, compelling myself to maintain eye contact. Cease all contact. Cease the playful jests. If either of us begins to sense that we are approaching the boundary, we will speak up. Very well, no dismissing it. He nodded slowly. It, the hesitation in his eyes was unmistakable. He was reluctant to release whatever it was that bound us together. It, a part of me felt the same way, yet I was aware that it was necessary for us to proceed and pursue. I extended my hand, enveloping his with a tender squeeze. I want you to understand that this is unrelated to my feelings for your presence. Ignites a spark within me. Noted. That moment will forever remain etched in my memory. This cannot be the path through which I rediscover that sensation once more. I must uncover what eludes me beyond the confines of this home, beyond our confines. His shoulders eased ever so slightly. At long last, after days of absence, I beheld the boy I had nurtured, the individual who placed their trust in me, rested against me, and gazed up at me, the man who had been gazing at me as if I were a stranger. I understand, he said, squeezing my hand. In return, my sentiments aligned perfectly with yours. I found myself at a loss for words. We will be all right, I declared, and I truly believed it. However, it is essential that we ensure it remains in that state. He enveloped me in a hug, warm and reassuring. This, if we had shared this embrace countless times before, as with all those that came before it. As he withdrew, an unmistakable shift lingered in the air. More buoyant it felt as though we had finally released the tension that had bound us for weeks. Afterward, he departed to join some friends. I positioned myself before the mirror and took a moment to truly observe my reflection, not solely at my body but at all that surrounds it. The gentle warmth in my gazelle manner, in which my hair cascaded around my shoulders, the radiance of my skin effortlessly luminous, even in its natural state. After many years, I finally experienced a sense of beauty within myself. Ali sought after. It had nothing to do with Noah, not quite. It was due to his ability to evoke the sensation of being seen. It would not be by his handy. Vowed to myself in that moment that I would not allow that sensation to slip away. I would discover methods to sustain its vitality through fresh encounters, intriguing individuals, and perhaps even a budding romance. When the time felt right, yet it would not be by his hand. It was impossible. When Noah returned home later that night, we seamlessly slipped back into our familiar rhythm: dinner, television, and easy conversation. For the first time it felt effortless, once more cozy, as if we had rediscovered the path that led us to one another, even if we had sacrificed something in our journey. I reclined in bed that night, a myriad of thoughts swirled in my mind, each one echoing the question, what if we allowed it to unfold even more? What if we had ventured beyond that boundary? What if the part of me that yearned for knowledge Lingered on ever truly fading into the background, uncertainty clouds my path. Yet I am acutely aware of the intricate nature of my situation. Uncertainty clouds my path, yet this is the reason I feel compelled to share this. Perhaps there exists an individual who possesses a perspective I have yet to consider. If you have encountered a situation akin to this or are aware of someone who has, I would genuinely appreciate your insights. At times, clarity eludes us when we find ourselves entrenched in the thick of it. Let this serve as a poignant reminder. Loneliness has a way of leading you to unexpected destinations. Cersus. Caution before you tread upon a boundary from which there is no return. I appreciate your willingness to lend an ear. Our insights are valuable, so don't hesitate to express them.